in this topic. I want to know Enneagram 8 inside and out.
All right, so everybody, welcome to MBTV. I have Daniel here. I'll have Taylor joining us. He's also an Enneagram 8. He's from Talking with Famous People. He's one of the co-hosts and owners of Talking with Famous People, as far as I understand the relationship. So, second, I had something. Okay, so that being said, the topic is Enneagram 8. We're going to dive into some of the relationship between cognitive functions and our respective MBTI types. And so that being said, I'll make sure when he pops in here, we'll go into it, and then we're going to go into a little bit of detail. Before he does, there's a few things I want to cover. I've kind of browsed around on the MBTI community online, see what the topic as of late is, and it happens to be where we've screwed up as a channel. And I mean we as an MBTV, not as a as a culture, not as a industry, not as an interest or a point of interest. So I want to first come out and say that I take full responsibility and accountability for where you may hold me accountable. And if you feel at any point that I have, me personally, not just us, but me personally, have lost credibility in the aspect of MBTI, I hope to redeem myself in the future. It's a matter of learning and a matter of process. We've had obviously two of our hosts change types right before our eyes. And what I mean by change types is they further understand themselves and they figured out a type that is more relevant to who they are. There's two things that are required when you're looking for your type. The first thing is to have a full understanding of the theory and the understanding of what it is you're using to type yourself. Okay, so if you're typing yourself using dichotomies, or if you're typing yourself using cognitive functions, it is to have a full understanding of that. The second aspect of that is to fully understand yourself, or at least understand yourself enough in how you process information. I've seen some pretty ruthless comments about how Daniel has changed type, and and he's wrong or whatever. And I've seen comments about nobody knows what we're doing over here. And I respond to this in kind, and I have a responsibility and a duty to you all to provide you with information that I feel is necessary and I feel is relevant to the current situation. And I do admit I have let you down by giving you mixed signals, using different word choices such as preference or prefer instead of you are or is, and many of you are used to that style. So I want to make sure that I show you that I've taken accountability for that, and I apologize for misguiding you in a direction that I feel has not been sufficiently educating you in a way that you need to be educated in, to give you the most relevant, up-to-date information on MBTI and other typology-based systems. I do extensive research on this stuff all the time, and the research doesn't yield as much new information as something that's more powerful than MBTI and Socionics and Enneagram, all these typology systems. There's one thing that I have found in life that is more powerful than these particular systems, and it's how you interact with people. And your interactions with people is the true indicator of what issues you may have going on and why you are the way you are. It is so yielding that you can use the type systems to understand your relationship with people and understand yourself better by looking at how you interact with others. And that's what stands out the most to me, is making sure that you're taking the information that you're learning in a theoretical concept, whatever it may be, applying it to your relationships and seeing how your behavior modifies, not to use your relationship partner or intimacy or anybody in your life, friendship or otherwise, as a test subject, but to fully understand how you're interacting. And so that interaction to me is what we're all here for. Nobody knows all the answers to typology. There's many times I've been wrong. Even in old videos, people quote me and I stand corrected many, many times. It's an ongoing journey, but I've always can tell you that one thing that has been consistent. The one thing that has been very consistent with me from the day I started this channel is to provide you with information as I fully understand it in that moment, and to give you the honest perception and how I take in that information and to process it and deliver in a manner in which is consistent as possible. If I stand corrected, I modify, I adjust, and I move forward. And that has always been my mission, objective with this channel, and that has never changed. So if you guys can fully understand and forgive me for misguiding you in many different ways, I hope that I do have your forgiveness and we can move forward from this confusion. I know it's been a disaster, and I apologize sincerely. So as soon as Taylor gets on here, we'll go into Enneagram 8.
Hey,
and
Damon.
Yeah.
I just wanted to chime in here because I'm trying to, I mean, I guess I have to get up to date. You know, I understand that a lot of these conversations I'm not present, you know, viewing them. But, you know, you have to remember that regardless of whatever system or topic that we're talking about, whatever we identify with, that everything's just a journey in progress, like you said, changing my type and Trey changing his type. You know, regardless of that situation, you have to understand the system, but you also have to understand how it applies to yourself, right? And so everybody has their own journey, right? And as we've had numerous conversations of, you know, talking about what it takes to really kind of evolve your awareness to really have it match, you know, and match to what feels right and in your own progress. It just makes more sense to see everything as a learning experience and kind of like personal growth as it is in real time, whether as something that's incorrect or not.
Yes,
Right.
and
So there's got to be.
you can. Oh, sorry, Daniel. You can witness this journey on Daniel's video of ENFJ and ENFP, how he made that transition. And I can tell you from personal experience that being around Daniel in person is a lot different than watching Daniel on video. And it's the same for me. You're going to see a different aspect of someone. So don't be so quick to jump the gun. But ultimately, more important than someone's type, I want to stress to you this. We're in the typology community. I've complained about this before, that somehow we're so fractioned. And what fractions us is something as simple as a difference in understanding of type theory, right? So you have somebody who understands type in the sense of, okay, well, I understand it in the way of Socionics, or I understand it in the way of Model A or Model G, or whatever it may be, and then that creates dissonance between you and another person. Don't let your understanding of type create the very thing that we're trying to achieve in type, which is enhanced relationships with other people and an enhanced version of ourselves. And if we can start understanding that about type and how we're using the community and how we're using this information to move forward, then we can actually do that. So I do take accountability because as one of the, whether I like it or not, as one of the leaders on this particular platform of typology, as we produce consistent videos related to typology, I take full accountability for the information that's being delivered and the integrity of that information. And if it's compromised in any way, it's compromised by my own perception or that perception of which whoever's presenting them information on this particular channel. I want you guys to still have faith that we will continue to provide information as we come across it to you all. And feel free to challenge it at some way. If you feel that something is off, that something is incorrect, it's important that we learn to disarm ourselves and disarm each other in the way of being gentle and cordial to each other as human beings. And there's never an excuse. Daniel, we got a lot of background noise. I'm muting you real quick. There's never an excuse for behaving in a certain way and treating somebody as if they're not human. And we all make this mistake. I made this mistake yesterday. I mean, it's constant that we lash out or we go get angry or we snap or we have something we're bitter toward. And let's just make the attempt to become better members of this community so we can enhance the overall knowledge of each other and help each other become more consistent with each other and more consistent in the way that we treat each other as human beings. So Daniel, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I did. You know, for one, like you're saying, you know, you're emphasizing kind of like the overall picture is that, you know, our platform is really, it's really open forum. And we're all on this journey together. We're no much masters in the person that we're you know, trying to help other people's in. You know, like we're making the content that we do, and we hope that it's just as good and qualitative as it possibly can. So along our journey, you get to follow and accompany us, and us to you, the viewer. And so we just have to, you know, take that into consideration when we're moving forward with MBTV. Is that it's all learning experiences that you get to see what we've learned and what we've integrated, and that we feel that it's necessary to share with our community, everybody else viewing this, you know, whether you're a new participant or pre-existing.
Yeah, and the guys, for you watching, this is live. So that being said, I am looking at your comments, but also I want you all to know that this part will be cut out of this video, and I might make a separate video for it. Just so you know that I am paying attention to your comments, but it's off topic. It's not related to Enneagram 8. I'm just waiting for Taylor, and I didn't want to start the show late. So just give us a little bit more time, and give Taylor a little more time. He will arrive. He just confirmed with me a few minutes ago, and so he's taking care of a few matters, and he'll be.
And Taylor is who?
Taylor's
another type 8.
He's a co-host from Talking with Famous People, ENTP type 8.
Oh, nice. This is going to be very cool because...
Yeah, so it's all 8 cognitive functions being represented. Now, granted, we both have tertiary or inferior feeling and vice versa, sensing. And so...
Well, me and you have synergy with Taylor, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Hopefully, we got an agenda. We know what we're going to discuss, so just hang on, guys. I apologize for the delay here. If you would, just... stick around.
By the way, Damon, I can't see the comments. So if there's anything that addresses me, just let me know.
Sure.
If it's relevant.
His MBTI type is ENTP. So he, like I said, all the cognitive functions will be represented. Now, granted, feeling and sensing will be represented in a smaller aspect, but I think. Oh, whoops. Yeah, he needs the link again. I apologize, guys. Hold on 1 second. All right. So he should be here any minute now. So that being said, we will get this started here in a second.
Welcome, Trey.
Trey will pop on. Trey just got on, actually. So. So yeah, anyway, guys, I do take full accountability, and I just want to give you my sincerest gratitude for being and sticking with me and Daniel and Trey and Blake and I through the remainder and the growth of this channel, and hopefully we'll continue to provide you top quality content in your future. So.
And believe me, there's tons of content to be had, so buckle in.
Yeah. And yeah, I still type as ENTJ. That's not going to change. If that changes, MBTV is closing down, and I don't. I mean, I'm kidding, of course. If I find some new revelation,
guys, I've met Damon in person. He is a ENTJ according to the MBTI system.
Yeah, so
he is a full-blown ENTJ. Like, he makes ENTJs great again. Like, don't worry. So, like, literally, the reason why ENTJ still exists is because of Damon.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah. So that being said,
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I understand. But yeah, that being said, guys, that's not going to change. Yes, ENTJ 8 and ENTP 8. That's absolute. So yeah, like I said, if anybody, I've had a lot of people question my type. A lot of people have gone through, but as far as my understanding, MBTI wise, JCF wise, ENTJ is the only thing that ever made sense to me. I've researched it time and time again. I try to keep an open mind when I'm taking in new information. I'm honestly not fixated on type. If Carl Jung rose from the dead and said, "No, son, you are not ENTJ," I would be like, "Okay, you're right." Okay, but I mean, in reality, if there's a solid argument of why I'm not a certain type, I'll take it into consideration. I keep an open mind when I read new source materials. Always go, well, let's see if there's anything else that resonates with me. The confusing part for you guys right now might be the Socionics identification. As far as my understanding goes, and that's the disclaimer, as far as my understanding of Socionics goes, like I said, I relate to SLE, but that does not mean that I identify with it as it is in its own integrity, which means I don't have a full understanding of Socionics to say that I am one way or the other at this point. I will keep you guys updated on any research that I find that does support that, but at this point, that's it. All right, so Taylor is on, and I don't know if he's on for sure, but he just popped in, so it should be any second. We're going to start diving into 8. So Taylor, welcome. If you can hear me, you can do a brief sound check if you want, but that being said, I'll start this off, and he'll probably just pop in when he gets a second. So I will start this off with the factor of Enneagram 8. Obviously, I've told my life story in many other videos, things that I've been through, things that I've struggled with. My loneliness video was a big one. I was surprised it didn't get as many views as I thought it would get because it's actually a really, really super personal video. But you can see a lot of the struggles and a lot of the factors that are involved in the Enneagram 8. And I really want to dive into some of these tonight because there's been questions on Slack about it. Get a little noise from that end. Hang on 1 second, get that rectified. Okay, so, but I'm going to pull up some things for you guys. And Enneagram 8 obviously has been a topic on Slack as of late, so we're going to go into that. Taylor, can you hear me? Everything loud and clear? Good?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you see me, hear me?
Yeah, you're good to go. So we'll dive into this. We're going to. I got a little bit of an echo on your end.
Okay, yeah, I just turned my volume way up.
So, but the two things I want to make sure we accomplish tonight with the audience, obviously, is making sure that we relate to the Enneagram 8 as it pertains to the cognitive functions in both of our stacks. That should cover all 8 functions. And then I want to make sure that the audience has a full understanding of Enneagram 8 as well. So these are the things that I hope to get across in the next 45 minutes or so. Obviously, we want to make it action-packed and content. Daniel, Trey, if you have anything to add, just make it brief so we can kind of expedite this process.
Of course.
Yeah, so no long stories, no monologues. Let's keep it on topic. Let's flow through. Let's get this going. All right, starting out with Enneagram 8. Obviously, you guys have seen a lot of my stories on this channel. If you don't know Taylor, he's Talking with Famous People. He's one of the co-owners, co-hosts on there. So, Taylor, would you mind briefly sharing how you came across Enneagram 8 and then kind of telling us?
Yeah, I came across it through MBTI. When I learned about MBTI, it was real interesting to me, particularly learning about the feeling component of people. Because up until I actually learned it academically, I assumed that everybody was logical at their core. But from there, I got into MBTI and then started, as you look around, then you get introduced to Enneagram or Socionics. But I just now am recently actually paying attention to Enneagram. A bit hokey to me at first until I gave it a run, and now it's pretty interesting. So I'm new to it, but I think we're both mover shakers, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
Taylor and I happen to have the same tri-type. Taylor, just FYI, I get a little bit of a weak signal from you, so you're cutting in and out a little bit. I don't know exactly what's going on. Maybe it's on my end. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. But yeah, we happen to have both the same tri-type. So 837, and we're gonna, like I said, he's ENTP for those who weren't here earlier. So he briefly touched on the Enneagram. He's getting into it. Enneagram's something that I've studied for a while. It was never really a difficult choice for me. There, I mean, as I've actually grown, I've actually witnessed the Enneagram in itself, as far as all 9 aspects or virtual vantage points. I say virtual, but it's all kind of a vantage point of reality. I've noticed all these types within myself, and I've noticed 1 through 9. And obviously, the core type is 8. That's the one that stands the strongest. But when I first started researching Enneagram, I identified only with 8, and I didn't think any of the other fears or desires or weaknesses, appealed to what I thought as I knew myself at the time. And then as I've grown older, I see the Enneagram in all its totality. And this is one of the things about Enneagram 8. Enneagram 8 has a holy truth of understanding things as its whole and looking for the wholesome truth. And so when we look at Enneagram 8, their idea is seeing the holy truth of the entire totality of reality as it is in itself, not as it pertains to the individual, and not as it pertains to the not as how we should appear in reality. So the body center is about the totality of reality. Specifically, 8 is more about the wholesomeness of reality. The fear center is more centered on ourselves as a matter or component of reality. And then the shame center, or the feeling center, or the emotional center, as you want to call it, which is 2, 3, and 4, that aspect is more concerned about the image in which you should present in reality, what you should strive to do, or what you should strive to be. So if you start noticing more Enneagram types in your personality, I actually think it's a very positive thing. That's a little off topic. So let's dive back into Enneagram 8. So Enneagram 8 is about this whole truth, looking at things as a whole, kind of removing the components. You'll see this a lot as I take individual ideas and I tend to throw them together. It's because, again, we're trying to combine things into a whole and not to take away from that. And if we look at it on our vantage point of reality as it is, we want to see it as everything is ultimately connected. So this yields a lot of the characteristic behaviors of Enneagram 8. And Enneagram 8, as far as MBTI, JCF functions go, that's Jungian cognitive functions, or JCFs, as long as they go, there's Enneagram 8s. The most common Enneagram 8s are ENTPs, ESTJs, and ENTJs. There are Enneagram 8 INFPs. There are Enneagram 8. Pretty much any type can be an Enneagram 8 as far as that. So there's no not allowed versions as far as Enneagram 8 goes. Like you're INFJ, you can't be an 8. 8 is common. It might be your tri-type, may not be your core type. So TE, I'm going to start with thinking, and then we're going to go into sensing and feeling, and then we're going to dive into intuition. I'll start with thinking as far as extroverted thinking goes. I'll allow Taylor to share his viewpoint of introverted thinking and how it pertains to his type. We may not get a lot of data on this because the complete crossover from Enneagram is not as smooth as we'd like, but we are going to go into a little bit of detail. So TE, in retrospect of what it has been for me, is building an organization of to maintain self-control, to be on top, whether it's on top of a pile of dirt or on top of a mountain or on top of anything else that I construct. It is to make sure that I drive my agenda forward, to make sure that I remain on top, where I am not controlled by others. And this has been a natural thing throughout my life until recently, which I've had a very close personal friend of mine advise me that it's time to let go of this aspect of my fixation. And so the retrospective TE for this is the building an organizational aspect of maintaining control of not only my environment, but of agendas, work schedules of people, making sure that jobs are done and they're done correctly and they're done on time, and making sure that we're being respectful to the limits set by the objects in our reality, to the things that we have stipulated should be, or the order in which we produce. So making sure that there's an underlying feeling of FI, which I'm going to talk about. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but just making sure that we're pushing an agenda of maintaining control and ultimately regulating, keeping logical consistency to protect myself from others toppling over me. And that's been used in the sense of logic. It would be different in the sense of sensing, and we're going to get into that as well. Taylor, do you have anything to add as far as introverted thinking goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two. My dad's an ENTJ, so I've got a bit of perspective with both T's, which I don't think most ENTPs probably do, and both logic based, but they can butt heads sometimes. It's interesting seeing TE progressing, and TI will come up with an issue or a flaw, and TE will want to run through it or over it, and TI will go, hold on here. Just an observation. I was really going nowhere with it.
Yeah.
But just an interesting dynamic with T's, because as much as we are we appear similar and have 3 or 4 same letters, our functions are all reversed. So you said we're going to get into TI a little bit later. I'll let you.
If you want to start with TI, I've already just spit through TE real quick.
You mentioned FI.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
That's my blind spot. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get into feeling. Did you want to add anything as far as TI goes and how it relates to Enneagram 8 or what you've personally observed?
Yeah, it's where you dig in at. It's where I was watching a video on here about type 8s, and I don't remember whose it was, but the one was describing how 8s become immovable objects if they want to, and that is, I've noticed that TI is where I get immovable.
Okay, so you said immovable, is that correct?
An immovable object.
Yeah. So how do you typically handle something like, if you found that something like you said, that STE tends to plow through things and not be as thorough, do you feel the Enneagram 8 tug or the fixation to kind of go, you're wrong? And how do you do that in a very TI way? What is the manner in which you come out and say, okay, do you hit it head on? What's your normal approach for that?
I normally hit it head on. Yeah, I hit it head on and I make it as concise as possible. Just, this is the issue, and we're not going anywhere until this is ironed out. So, of course, depending on whether I care about the thing that is illogical or not, has a lot to do with how much I dig in. But yeah, when I do, it's very precisely communicated, just right here.
Right. And I would say from my own personal experience, and you can tell me otherwise, but the manner in which aggression I've used as an Enneagram 8 as far as MBTI goes, and one difference between so far talking with famous people in MBTI, just to give you guys a disclaimer, is I am under the interpretation that Socionics information metabolism elements are quite different than the JCF. I don't know if talking with famous people is not on that, so I'm not going to go into the Socionics discussion today, but I am going to say this aspect, which is, you know, as far as being a TE dominant, my aggression has always been channeled in a way like he said he wants to stop something or hit something head on. It's always been for me is going after something head on, but in a very, very logical manner. So I've never really, if my issue was with the logic and not the person, I'm going to attack the logic. I'm never going to attack the person. I've always been able to compartmentalize that very well in my life. Whereas if my issue is with the person, it's quite different. If my issues with the person, it can obviously escalate into areas that I don't wish it to escalate as of my age now and my maturity. But can you tell me a little bit about that, Taylor? Like, would you say it's similar for you as being a TI auxiliary, or is it different? How would that manifest in your perspective?
I'm a TI heavy subtype. I'm really TI heavy for an ENTP. So I swing that stick harder than most. But I have noticed that and yes, ENTJs are super logical. It's really easy to get along with them and get on board with it 99.5% of the time. And then that 0.5% of the time, though, that I do throw a roadblock up, it's always a surprise. Because if you think about the types just at a headline level, I don't know who else is likely to be that TI stout and confrontational.
Right. And so yeah, the confrontational aspect. And did you find that do you compartmentalize the person aspect? Because this will actually move into a little bit of FE and FI too, which I want to target next. Is the personalized aspect? Do you tend to interchange the person or with the logic, or do you go off the logic head on as well? So since you said you're TI heavy, how does that manifest?
I hit right at the TI. I hit right at the issue. I know for myself and most ENTPs I've met, it's very rare that I ever turn a put down or anything. Most of the things that people get offended by are not actually personal judgments. So when I say you're wrong, it's at the item on the table. It's not a character judgment on the person I'm speaking to. So they're almost never combined in my mind, and I don't have to work to separate them. The only time they start to come together is when I can tell that someone understands me and they're intentionally ignoring what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
Then
go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, that's it. If they understand what I'm saying and they understand that they're wrong and I'm right, which you can see it in their eyes, and then they just dig in on it, that'll start to get a little bit more blurred.
A side note I want to go before we dive into the aspect of feeling, introverted feeling, both extroverted feeling. The side aspect I really want to understand from you guys' standpoint, as well as just Enneagram 8 in general, is the confrontation aspect. I mean, do you find yourself very confrontational still, or has it changed since you were younger?
It changed a lot since I had my daughter.
Okay. Do you mind sharing any of that?
Sure. I mean, just kind of in a nutshell, I used to, it calmed me down a lot. And part of it might be just I'm not going out to bars anymore like I was when I was a hooligan. But, as far as confrontation, fighting and conflict used to be sort of a sport, and it's not now. So I'm not sure how to put that in a nicer term, but I used to fight for fun. I don't fight for fun anymore. I'm more patient with people. Learning about this stuff has also increased my patience with people, because I understand now that people actually don't think the way that I do. But yeah, as a real job, stuff like that, I've calmed down a lot. And when I do address things, it's in a much more measured approach. I still confront things, certainly, but it's not belligerent like it was. It's not. I'm not looking for a clash. I'm just not going to avoid one.
Right. So the thing that I had the same issue, but it kind of manifested a change over the last, I would say, 8 years, 7, 8 years. And what happened was that, obviously I've talked about this in other videos, but I'm not sure if you're aware. I studied martial arts my whole life. And, when you're drilled over and over and over again, never resort to physical violence, I've always used my logic to pierce and penetrate or diffuse as necessary. And so I've never really found myself turning to physical altercation unless it's a last resort. And even then, I can still maintain some element of control. But there was a period where I was really battling with this, and it was when I was much younger, is this confrontational aspect where you feel like you need to or have to. And I talked to Trey a little bit about this too, is this reaction gut intelligence. It's not, and I don't know if anybody else can relate to this. I'd love to hear your insight on this, but as someone who identifies with Enneagram 8, for me, I rely more on a gut-centered type intelligence. And I know this, even though my head operates and I'm logical, it's generally after the fact, after I've already reacted. And it's like, okay, I shouldn't have reacted in that physical way because it resulted in this negative consequence that I didn't think of, but it's very instinctual. And it's and I guess that a lot of that is rooted in that anger center as well, as when you have this instinctual anger, you snap, and then maybe there's a feeling of regret or guilt or whatever may be associated with it. I don't really feel guilty being angry. I feel guilty of the result of my anger if it causes a cataclysm in some type of relationship. And so there's this aspect of, okay, if I found that my anger had a manifestation or had an effect on somebody in a way that was dramatic or traumatizing to a person that was unnecessary, then this probably wasn't the best approach. And that's my head kicking in later. But it's very instinctive. I've never found myself in a place of hesitancy, like locked up, paralyzed. It's always like I've either got to do or do or do. It's like, and I react immediately to a choice. So indecisiveness has never been an issue. Do you parallel that at all, or is there a similarity, or how does it differ in you? Maybe you can represent me in TPs here.
Almost paralysis was, I never understood other people's paralysis. I would kind of crisis situation. It was like everything slowed down, and whenever there's an emergency or something that needed quick action, and people were
Taylor, I am losing your signal.
Or whatever.
I got probably 10% of that.
Slowed down speed.
Yeah. Could you repeat that? And
sorry.
Yeah. So I pretty much got about 10% of the answer to the question. So I'll just repeat the question. Do you relate to anything I said, or is there something I said, or anything like that?
I related to almost all of it. Yes, I certainly go, and I know what you're talking about when I've never flinched or hesitated at a tense situation. I perform excellently in them. For me, it's like time slows down to about a third its normal speed. And so, yeah, I mean, I've just always been that guy in a crisis situation or whatever who's got shit handled before anyone else figures out what's going on. Until recently, I chalked most of that up to extroverted intuition. I don't typically lose control or surprise myself if I confront someone or physically, because I knew it was coming. There's that extra layer of premonition, like this shit's gonna happen.
I understand that.
Yeah. So I never felt bad ever, except for like one time I hit a guy. I didn't mean to actually do much more than the love tap, but I did. So I've never really had much remorse over it. I just recognize that it's not it's just a shitty way to be. So but one thing for me is it was fighting was always a very FE heavy activity for me. And I could logic it, and I don't know, maybe maybe it's the environment I was in or whatever, but it was absolutely rational for me to assertively fight one person right now and then not fight anybody else again for a while.
And so you say you pair it with FE. Can you explain that pairing?
Yeah. I would, well, for several reasons, I would always fight the biggest guy that I could find. I had a thing where, I'm trying not to sound like too much of a 8 stereotype, but if I needed to establish myself, I'd go into a party or wherever, and I'd find the biggest guy in the house, and I'd try to knock him out in one punch. And I almost never knocked him out in one punch. I almost always won the fight.
Right. I can definitely relate to that. When I used to box a lot, I'd always box way out of my weight class. I was 130 pounds, and I would box 250-pound plus guys. And I had some kind of fun aspect of when they hit me, how hard it was, and I enjoyed it. It was like, this is fun to me. And
it gets you more revved up.
Yeah, it's like I was like, I thought I was masochistic for a while because I was like, this is fun. And of course, I didn't let myself get hit, but when I did, I was like, holy crap, that was good. like supercharged. And
it hurts the next day. It never hurts when you get hit.
Right.
I can't believe you did that shit. And that's really where the FE thing kicked in, was when I realized that I just needed to let myself get furious and blow up. And then you could see people not knowing what to do. Like, you're smaller than me, Taylor. You shouldn't be acting like that. What are you doing?
Right. Yeah, I think we pick fights that we logically have marginalized room for winning, but we still somehow make it work because the conflict itself actually energizes us.
Right.
And where I think it wears other people out. I remember I got in a particular altercation with 2 guys. It was 1-on-2. It was me and 2 other guys. And I was like, I'll take both of you on, and it'll be just my hands. You guys can kick, you can punch. I don't care. I'll take both of you on with just my hands. And I got the crap beat out of me. I mean, bad. It was, I had a black eye, like a busted ear. My whole face was black and blue, and I just kept going. I kept going, and I kept going. And I mean, I got him down, but we were like, you know what? This is crazy. And I was laughing. I was like, this is sick, man. But I really enjoyed that. But I think there's a part of it that there is this need to live in conflict, and this is where the fixation of the Enneagram 8 is we some part of the Enneagram 8 and our ego fixation loves conflict. It's energizing, it charges us, it makes us thrilled. It's like the pinnacle of life. And if you're 8 wing 7, I believe Taylor's 8 wing 7 as well, is that you're living life to the fullest in conflict. And without conflict, then your life seems almost empty. So it's almost an addiction to conflict in a sense. And you'll read this in Shazo and any other Enneagram expert, including Naranjo. You'll see a lot of the aspect of the 8 in the captured by the word sadism, which is inflicting pain. And it is done either verbally or physically. So these are common stereotypes that are associated with 8 that are necessarily true. But here's where the community has kind of lost its way as far as Enneagram or anybody else has studied, is that the Enneagram is associated with these character stereotypes or these archetypes, that the 8 is this dominating, controlling person. Is that a healthy person? This is a question that we have to ask. Is that a healthy person or not? And with the course of my life, I have recognized that this is not an effective way to be. If I were to raise kids, as Taylor is doing, or any other situation, would I want my children or anybody that I have a direct influence off to model my particular behavior? And if so, I want them to be tough. I want them to be able to handle themselves. But do I want them to go out and seek harm upon other people, or even, inflict that kind of harm? Is it really a good way to be? And logically speaking, I said, no, it's an ego fixation. So when you're so identified with an Enneagram type, you're actually attaching to something that you probably shouldn't be attached to, because Naranjo went as far as saying you don't want to be Enneagram type. You want to move away from it. You being an Enneagram type is identifying some type of weakness in your ego manifestation. So that being said, I don't want to get too far off track with talking about Naranjo and that sort of that whole can of worms. But I do want to talk about feeling. Taylor mentioned here that feeling is a part of fighting was a way that he manifested his feeling. Could you tell me how FE may have appeared as an Enneagram 8 in other areas of your life, or even elaborate further on the fighting or confrontational aspect of FE?
FE manifests. Well, certainly, I mean, there's certainly a Machiavellian component to it, as there's with all FE, I think, but it's a tool that I didn't always have or wasn't always familiar with, but when I got it and learned how to use it, it's one of those things that when you pull an FE trick off just right, it feels good. Like, yeah, that one worked. Whereas if I pull off an intuitive trick or a thinking trick, it's like, well, I just do that shit. That's what I do. So it became more of a toy for me to use. And so to that extent that it was a toy, I used it a lot more Machiavellian sense when I was younger and fighting and stuff. As I've gotten older, I see it more as a TE tool. And to some extent, because I've got an FI blind spot, it's hard to tell when it's happening, but I know that it's a manifestation to some extent of FI. So.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Oh, I thought you were going to add something else.
I was going to say before I forget, you had said that no one should want to be any Enneagram type. Right. I got mistaken for a type 2 the other week, so I'm pretty proud of that. And son, if you watch this, thanks, bud.
That's actually, yeah, like I said, I was telling somebody on Skype the other day that the more that you recognize that these other Enneagram types in your personality, I think it's a positive thing. I think this is where the theory of integration and disintegration actually came from, is recognizing how these other types manifest. I have definitely felt the pull to 2, but I wouldn't say true integration is actually moving to another Enneagram. It's recognizing that Enneagram within yourself. And I think the 8 can recognize the 2 and the 5 pretty easily.
I've never once ever felt like I could possibly move to a 2 as a permanent state being. But I did get a lot less 80 when I had a daughter. I don't know if you have kids or not, but that did a lot. So.
Yeah. So I'll explain briefly for you guys that my perspective on FI as far as Enneagram goes is I have always considered myself a very ethical person. And not more ethical than anybody else, but just how adherent I am. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm pretty strict on my particular value code. It's pretty personalized to me, and I never have enforced my value code on someone else that is not in my immediate environment, which means I don't think it's universal. I think it's very personalized. So how this manifests as an Enneagram 8 for me is that my environment is under my control. And if I find that something is infringing on a particular value system or organized system for the sake of those values in my environment, then the Enneagram 8 controlling mechanism starts coming out. Does it mean that I'm going to apply force and throw someone outside and throw them in a dumpster because they violated me? No, it means that you're going to start seeing this typical force that comes with the Enneagram 8, the confrontational side, that obviously I'm going to challenge the value system in which you're using as it has an effect on my immediate environment. And so as far as FI goes, there's that aspect, and there's another aspect I've talked about quite a bit with the protection mechanism as far as Enneagram 8 goes. Enneagram 8 is often associated with many Enneagram 8s, not all. I haven't seen all there's a lot of Enneagram 8s who haven't admitted this or don't have this aspect. I don't know why yet, but a lot of the Enneagram 8s I have spoken with, and Taylor can confirm or deny this aspect, but there is a protection mechanism involved, which means that for people that you deem as weaker in a certain aspect of your life or a certain aspect that you're strong in, to protect these people from some type of physical or mental or emotional harm. And there is an innate commanding aspect of the Enneagram 8, which anything that threatens those lives of those people becomes a major issue for me personally. And it's one of the guiding compasses where I started MBTV from the beginning, and I started the YouTube channel was because I felt that I was almost obligated to protect people at the very core. And I never needed to be recognized for it. Many times I've turned it over. But I think this is very paired with what Taylor mentioned earlier, is this tunnel vision. Any major crisis that's ever happened in my life, time has slowed completely down. I'm talking any physical, actual life or death situation where I had to take care of somebody, where somebody had a medical emergency. Time completely slowed down, and I became from competent to uber competent. And I mean, it was like, I know I could do the job if I think about it actively. Like, okay, can I perform CPR right now? Yeah, I know the steps and all this. How fast can I perform it? I'd rate myself, whatever, 6 out of 10. And then when it actually happens, I become like a 12 out of 10.
Yeah, you don't even question if you can do that or if you remember it. You just start doing stuff. And before, like, I don't know if, again, I don't know where type A ends and extroverted intuition begins, but I know I've started responding to things before it happened. I guess I'm not going to get into the story that I'm thinking about in too much detail, but it's just a split second before too. It's like, fuck, I better go get some paper towels because that's going to be a lot of blood on the carpet.
Right. So I can't say that I've necessarily predicted what was going to happen. If I did, I don't remember. I can't.
It's just, I don't know what it is. It's the same thing. It just happens. You're 12. You just start doing stuff and you don't question it.
Right. It's just very instinctive. I can recall a particular scenario where I was running a fitness camp that was really, really, really intense. And there was a particular person there who was having an asthma attack. And I remember that the minute somebody called, ran over to me and was freaking out, was like, oh my God, this person is can't breathe and all this. And I remember it was like all the sounds around me just kind of shut off. And you can almost feel being sucked into that very experience. And it was like the time completely slowed down. Every breath seemed like 30 seconds in between. And it was one of the most calming aspects of my life. Like I said, for Enneagram 8, it's almost like they like this conflictory aspect, or they like this being in almost like this pull to the moment, this pull of being actually present right then, right now. And that conflict, or that very tense scenario, is where we feel most comfortable in a way. And at the same time, it's like the point of like being in the zone. And Taylor, can you relate to that at all? Or is there an aspect of that?
I mean, I think that when in a crisis situation, we go straight into, I think flow is what they call it, when you're just going. It's a state of flow for sure.
All right. Well, I'll take a brief hiatus. Trey, do you want to add anything? I don't think I got sound from you, Trey. It's the same problem as last time. Can you change your sound real quick? I want to make sure you get a chance to talk.
Do you see that I surrounded myself with all my 8 shit?
Yeah, I do see that. Like,
always have this. My whole house doesn't look like this.
No, it's pretty cool though. I was actually going to ask you about that off air. Like, I was going to ask you about your paintings, or whatever they are. I can't see this far, but
ask away. Nothing's sacred.
Are they paintings or are they photographs? I can't tell from here.
Painting. This one's a photograph canvas, but it's signed, and they only made 100 of them.
Can you hear me?
Wow. Yeah, you're good, Trey. All right, go ahead.
All right, yeah, I was just gonna say earlier when you guys were talking about is being an 8 a healthy way to live, or like a good way to live. Maybe not as a full-blown 8, but I do know that the 8 characteristics are really important because to me, from what I can see, the characteristics of an 8 are almost like the full understanding of their potential as an individual and their control and how they can move about in something. And I say that because, I'll even give you an example. I know this girl that I think I'm speculating she might be an 8. She at least has it in her tri-type. And she was driving, and this girl goes like, because she said, hey, you guys want to go to Whataburger? And this other girl says like, no. And I said no. And she says, well, the other girl says, if you want to go to Whataburger, you can go to Whataburger. And she literally goes, I know I can go to Whataburger. Like, and that was something that, it reminded me of Damon. Like, I feel like Damon would have said something like that. I know what I can do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know I could have gone to Whataburger. I know I could have gone and done this. you know? And so like for 5, I remember when I first was around like Damon and stuff, I'd be working on my computer and then I'd think, man, I want to play a video game. Like I want to like do this instead for a while. And I'd think about it and be like, yeah, but what does he think of that? And then I'd be caught in action. You know what I mean? And then a moment later, he'd come out and turn on the video game. And it was like, I started to realize that, you know, a 5 is so like, they're concerned not with what's going on for themselves or anything like that, but they're more concerned with more like sort of like what other people will think and how it will play out all together, and not really concerning themselves with their own wants and desires. And so it keeps me from doing the things I want to do all the time. And so for a 5 to have the characteristics of an 8, I can definitely see how, you know, for me, I definitely need to own up to like my own feelings, my own everything. Like if I want to do something, then I should like act like I want to do it. If, you know, if I feel a certain way, then I should definitely act like I feel it. And I see that with an 8. You know, if you know, Damon's pissed off, he's pissed off and he knows it, and everyone else does too. You know what I mean? Well, sometimes. But for me, you know, it's just like, if I'm pissed off, you know, it's you wouldn't be able to tell really. So and like,
Go ahead, finish. Go ahead.
what were you saying?
I was gonna say, it's almost, it feels almost like an ethical code or something. Like if I'm mad and I'm hiding it from you and being dishonest, so I don't like that. And I'm also patronizing you because I assume that you can't handle me and stuff. So I try not to insult people by hiding it, unless I really just don't know them at all. And also, you said you think about other people and what they think if you play video games, for instance.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, who the fuck has the right to make you question what you're doing in your life?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I would start getting kind of type A-ish for you. Like, okay, who says about playing video games?
All right. Well, you know, there's this aspect too that there's a couple things I want to bring up in this kind of in the range of this topic, and one of the stereotypes of an 8 is this dominating action hero personality, and I've stressed this on Slack a little bit, that the action hero personality is more of a counterphobic 6 trait. What you're going to see from an 8 is, think of like a bear you don't want to poke. And they don't really feel the need to come off like a hero. They don't feel the need to generally impress, because they're not really concerned with image. It's not like I feel the need to show you how dominant I am or how awesome I am. I don't care. But at the same time, and so you'll get kind of a laid back feel from them, kind of just a general, you know, but then when you hit those points where they're, like I said, those protective values, that's where they start kind of snapping. That's where they're going to react and confront directly. Whereas a counterphobic 6 is very much more into the action hero theme to overcome, because that is the very opposite. If you think of Rambo, or you think of people who jump into fear and all these things, and I must face my fears to become better and all this, that is more of a counterphobic 6 trait, because they're worried about overcoming fear. The 8s don't care. The 8 is more concerned with being able to not, go ahead.
It's anger.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And one thing Trey said that I do want to add on too is that, you know, I can't hide my anger. I try so hard. I really do. But it affects everyone in my environment. If I am angry, whether I say anything or not, or whether I'm purposely trying to hide it or not, it doesn't make a difference. People know.
Yeah, no, he'll come out and you know, if he's angry, he might spend a lot of time in his room or whatever. He might come out though, and he might just hang out. And you can his eyebrows, he looks pissed off. And he'll act like it's normal. And I'll be like, hey, are you okay? And he'll be like, yeah, no, I was just thinking about something. I don't know, just whatever. And I'll be like, about what? He'll be like, I was just thinking about, and he'll find something else, right? And it's if he doesn't want us to know, or he's trying to push it down. but like it's so obvious that he's upset about something. So he a lot of times he just completely keeps himself in his room so that nobody knows. But then even that, you know, everyone's like, why is he in his room for so long?
And it's a thing about burying, because somebody mentioned this earlier. 5s are more disconnected from their anger. Sometimes they don't know if they're angry. 8s are very aware of their anger, and they tend to want to bury it or express it. And they only bury it because there's some kind of moral restriction generally. Like, I don't feel like I want to, you know, or show that I can't control my emotional aspect, or show that I'm weak and I don't have any self-control. So I'm going to just try to bury it down and then ignore the aspect of it, so I don't have to, you know, demonstrate this. And then obviously people are going to think I don't have this type of emotion or control, and they're not going to believe in me or not going to use me as a support figure, which can be a morality issue with many 8s that I've spoken with, and myself included, more of that aspect. So I try to hide it, and I go, it is not because I'm ashamed of anger. I'm angry almost every day about something. I'm super irritable, and I'm aware of it, and I'm like, okay, you need to calm down, like, relax. It's just, you know, whatever it may be. So there's that aspect as well, is that there's a presence that's associated with 8s, and pretty much anybody can feel the 8's presence. So if the 8 is angry or upset or irritated, other people are going to pick on it very easily, especially people who use FE. It's going to be very evident for them very quickly, and they're going to want to try to reconcile and give you a hug. So, Taylor, any add-on to that?
No, just super familiar. I mean, I several times have gone into work and had, you know, for whatever reason, you know, some mornings are, I'm not a morning person in general. You probably are. I hate mornings. Anyways, several times I've been sitting in my office doing work, you know, just doing my stuff, and I'll get an email from someone who's in the same building, but like across the building, like, bad morning. Like, and I default to, I'm tired. I didn't sleep much last night. How do you know that?
I can relate so much. Everybody's like, I mean, I get asked what's wrong all the time.
Do you have resting murderer face?
What was that?
Like, you know, women. There's some women with resting bitch face.
Yeah. Murderer face.
I have murderer face, apparently, because people actually snap pictures of me when I'm focused in on something, and it does look like I'm about to start stabbing a piece of paper or whatever. It's interesting finding out these things about myself.
Trey, I'm assuming, Trey, do you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to do with any murder face I've seen you do, but but I was just gonna say that, you know, there's been times where I experienced myself really angry, and I still don't like do anything. So like I remember, it's like one time I was driving somewhere and I was really, really pissed off about something. It's something really personal, and like I remember like yelling, like coming up with all these arguments and stuff. I'm alone in my vehicle, you know what I mean? But like I'm like ready to, like, you know, face the fire and stuff. But when I get there, I don't say a word about it. You know what I mean? And then, you know, I've been like, I remember one time I was like just thinking about something, and I was actually like about to go to bed, and I was thinking about all this stuff like I was pissed off about, and I could hear myself yelling and stuff in my head, but I would never actually do it. So, you know, it's funny because you said the whole like, everyone thinks you're upset or ask if you're upset, and actually I relate to that too, but it's in a whole different way, because people look at me, and literally this happened like last night at work. Somebody looked at me and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was spaced. So they asked me because they thought I was like really worried about something. That's why I was spaced. And like, so I get that a lot too, but it's definitely not for the same reason.
So, what was that?
And I don't know if you've seen Katie around here. Not this time, but she's around from time to time. And she's pointed out a lot of things to me. She's a type 2. And she's pointed out things that I don't know why it is, but maybe it's a blind spot FI thing, but I at first don't acknowledge or accept things about myself that I hear. Like, if you're in a bad mood and you're walking through a store or something, will people just start parting like you're Moses? You
people definitely pick up on it.
Like you turn to the chips aisle and they're like, but yeah. So, anyways, that's just something that's been interesting just recently to take notice of and go, okay, I don't believe that everyone's just automatically reacting to me like she says they are, but I'm going to watch for it. And they're automatically reacting to me the minute I turn in. So,
yeah. So here's the dilemma I have.
Everyone gets revived.
I got a dilemma. I want to know if you deal with this a lot or not. But that you may go to a public place and people will look at you. I feel like I cannot look away. They have to look away first. But then it's going to look like I want to kill them. And it's an inappropriate confrontation. So I'm stuck between, should I look away and start a conflict? And if I don't look away, it's going to start a conflict. They're going to think I'm staring at them, but I don't want to look away because it's going to be weak. I'm not going to do this. So I get in this dilemma.
It's all based on the demographic. If it's a man,
yeah, of course,
and be justified in, then I'll hold the look. If it's a woman or a kid or someone who's old, then I'll just let them have it.
Yeah, I hit this moral dilemma. Like, should I start this conflict or not? I really
like this dude's like, why does this guy want to fight me?
What's this guy looking at? And so, but yeah, that's one of the dilemmas I have. So let's move on to sensing really quick. I think we covered a lot of the sensing by getting into the zone, but I want to hear a little more about SI. How does SI manifest as a type 8 ENTP for you, Taylor? Any specific examples of how it influences your type 8? Anything that you can recall?
Well, I guess I don't know technically if this is how everything fits together, but there are some things. I'm an ENTP still, so I'm not organized at all. You can see down here, but every now and then there are certain things, and I don't know if it's an SI glitch or what, but there are certain things that will drive me nuts. If it's trash and it's in the sink, I'm gonna lose my shit because you could put it in the trash can instead of putting it in the freaking sink. So I have no idea if that's an SI thing in context of type 8 or not.
I know that some of mine will come out like some of my common sayings, like if somebody screws something up, I'm like, that's what you see in a trailer park. That's what you see in this, and that's my environment. Like, and I'll make jokes like that all the time, and I'm like, and I asked somebody like, that's the behavior that you'll see in this particular aspect, and many of you watching me like, well, I live in a trailer park. It's a saying. It's not like I hate on everybody who lives in a trailer park. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. Like, I'll say that quite a bit. And it's an effort to be funny at the same time, control my environment. I'm really, really, really serious about controlling my environment and keeping it a place of my own serenity. Because when I get out in the world, I'm ready to fight. And I don't mean fight physically necessarily, but it's a battle for me. And I mentioned this in the other video, that the life metaphor story about taking this conflict and trying to change this life metaphor of life is war. Right. And so I want my little fort, which is my household or my environment, to be the only place where I can actually just relax for 5 minutes. And that's how I've always set it up. I just want to be able to relax in my own place. So I'm pretty particular about that environment. When I go out there, I'll work on establishing or acquiring or the acquisition of resources. So anything, I think that is what you mentioned, though, is more of an SI slant. But I want to see, is there anything else that you can think? Now, SI is your inferior function. There's probably not a lot you could add to that. But I don't know how you see SI manifesting in just your personality in general.
Type 8 and ENTP kind of conflict in there, and type 8 is resolute, concrete, and fast acting, and ENTPs are not. So it's, I don't know. It's kind of a strange pairing, but I get questioned a lot if I'm an ESTP, which I think is interesting, and I attribute a lot of that probably to the type 8 behavior.
I remember that.
Surprisingly coordinated for an ENTP. I did play sports all through high school. I got invited to play them in college and didn't play them because I was busy doing stuff, peeping girls and stuff, and drinking. But yeah.
If you're finished, I have something to add that I've noticed recently about type 8. And so it has to do with one of my friends that I believe also has type 8, and I haven't really decided if they're, you know, full-blown type 8s, but I know that they have it. Now this is an actual 358. I'm pretty convinced. So this is funny because a lot of people talk about 358s, but I've never seen one. So so this guy, there's a lot of things he does it's a lot like Damon, and there's a lot of things he does it's a lot like me, right? So I start to notice him. One of the things he did was he was actually giving me a ride to work, and right when I got in, I could tell he was upset about something, right? Because I would talk about something and his response would not be like as engaged as he normally would be. So I could tell he was frustrated about something. He had something else on his mind. So I was asking about it, and then he started talking about it. After a while, he's kind of stubborn first. You know, type 8s normally don't really want to tell you. They'll be like, yeah, I just, you know, it's something else. Can't really pinpoint it yet. And that's funny because I've actually heard that exact same thing from Damon. And I'm like, I don't really know if that's true. If he can't pinpoint it yet, I think he knows exactly what he's pissed off about. You know what I mean? But we get out to over time, you know, he goes, actually, you know, I know exactly what it is. And he tells me, he's like, yeah, actually, you know, I'm upset about this or whatever. And he knows that, you know, I know a lot about Enneagram, and I use Enneagram a lot for resolving conflicts. So I started to, you know, talk about that and how I saw, you know, just from my perspective when he's talking about what happened, what I saw, so that he can kind of get an understanding from my perspective. And then right afterwards, you know, I waited 2 minutes and I was like, did that irritate you that I gave you advice? And he was like, yeah, a little bit. And he was like, but I also realized that that's kind of stupid. And he was like, so I just ignored it. So what I'm seeing with him though is that, you know, the thing he was upset about had to do with in his environment. He, like, someone was drawing, or someone that he lives with is really artsy, so they were doing some art on the like table where the TV's at, and they left all their art materials on the table, and he was irritated about it, and so he, you know, he ignored it apparently for 5 or 6 days, right?
No, man.
And he said every time he came back to that table, like, it was like a slap to the face. Because he thought, no, they're a full-grown adult, they'll take care of it, you know, I don't have to do anything, you know, maybe she forgot, whatever, but she'll come back and she'll pick this up. And so he goes back and he just starts to do his thing, and she never picks it up. And so he goes up to her and he's like, can you go pick up your like art supplies off of the, you know, off of the counter thing, because I just, you know, like, they've been around for exactly 6 days. And this is the 5 coming through, you know. He's like, I've actually counted. He's like, I've been watching the time. He's like, it's been 6 days. Is there any way that you can go over there and pick it up? And she's like, she just gets all upset about how, like, she is always working and doing dishes and all this stuff. And he's like, okay, but that doesn't like change the fact that there are your art supplies right here on the table, right? So point being that I think I've noticed type 8s have a very sensitive attention to like other people owning up to their shit. And it's almost like, you know, with 8s, I was saying that, you know, for them, when they're upset, they're upset. You know what I mean? When they're whatever they are that. And it's like very obvious, very clear. So if they want something, they get it. You know, it's whatever they're feeling, they are it. It's just very much the human aspect of that, like just wants and desires and, you know, stuff like that. So when someone sees that, you know, there's something wrong in the environment and it has to do with somebody else, I think for them, they're almost like, I don't need to do anything because the other person is responsible and they own up to their stuff just like I do. And so in a way, there's an expectation or a common moral system amongst 8s that has to do with like, you know, just owning up to something. And you know, I don't necessarily think I think it's really specific to the environment though. like Damon was saying earlier, and like you were saying with the whole like trash in the in the sink, was that you were like, why would you put it in the sink when there's a trash can, right? And I feel like that's something Damon would say, or this other guy would say, like that would irritate both of them. And it's because there's something that should be completely understood. And if two people are living together, or three people are living together, you know, there's a common, like, everyone has a role. Everyone has like a something they need to do, and it's not wrong. It's definitely right. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense. There's nothing wrong with it. But a lot of people don't feel it like the 8 does. So I think for the 8, they can get extremely frustrated when someone doesn't fulfill their part in the household or their role.
I don't see it as a role that other people have so much as just like a common decency.
Common decency, common courtesy is how I've heard it.
Decency burden me if you can avoid it doing something that burdens me with an equal or less amount of work.
Yeah.
As far as the trash goes, I mean, I'm still kind of stuck on the trash. It's something I really don't like. And I don't say this something from the trailer park. I say, it's fucking white trash. It's white trash. Put your McDonald's wrapper in the sink instead of the trash can.
You know, I just had an extension to that though. Is that actually, I think it has to do with the 8 not liking it when anyone infringes on them. So they don't want to infringe on anyone else either.
Right.
And so when someone starts to infringe on them, they're like, do you not have the courtesy to just make sure that you don't infringe on me? Just like in the same way, the 8 doesn't want to infringe on anyone else necessarily. You don't want to be the guy who, you know, makes someone else pick up trash or makes someone else do this or that. Because, you know that you sure as hell wouldn't like that. You know what I mean? So I think it has a lot to do with just like what you know, like I think it actually has something to do with the irritation of the 8. I think that the 8 realizes that they would get irritated about something like that. And so to make someone else take care of it would irritate them themselves. You know what I mean? Because they understand that if they were there, it'd make them mad. And that's actually, it's actually funny because, you know, for me, I don't mind. You know, like if I see something, like I don't mind, I'll just pick it up or whatever and I'll take care of it. But I think that like an 8 wouldn't mind either, but I feel like they would mind at the same time. Like they might take care of it, but they're also going to be like irritated that they have to take care of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm an ENTP. I really don't want to micromanage people. And so I'll be not only pissed off about the trash, I'll be pissed off that I'm pissed off because I have
because of the trash.
and I'm pissed. And I wasn't ready to be pissed today yet. But I'm also self-preserving, I think. I think I'm a self-preserving sexual. I think those are my instinctual variants. So however that bundles into the whole picture, I think hoarding is one of the things. I got a lot of books right here and stuff. I've got paintings and stuff on the walls, you know. I just have a lot of stuff.
Is it mostly books?
There was an earlier point you made, Trey, about vulnerability as far as like revealing what's bothering somebody. I can tell you from my perspective as well that one of my biggest issues has been accepting help from other people. And it's a continuous problem, and it's still present today. It's not something I've completely resolved. Why is it? Because it appears weak and it feels weak. And to me, whereas it's a contradiction and it's an ego trap, because in reality, if other people come to me for help, I don't look at them as weak. It's just if I go to other people for help or people offer help, I look at myself as weak. And so it's an internal contradiction, and it's a fabrication by my own ego. But the recognition of this is a step in the right direction as far as understanding how this operates in my personality. So a lot of the relationships have suffered in my life due to the fact that a lot of people just genuinely want to help. And I have seen that as people coming to me, maybe exposing a weakness that I'm not aware of, or I am aware of, and I don't want them to expose it. So I tend to get very aggressive when those little soft spots are opened up. And this is a very common theme in my life. And so when someone asks me, hey, what's going on, what's wrong, what are you thinking about, or whatever, I'll generally just say, oh, nothing, it's this or this, to deflect, ultimately to not reveal any weakness so that people don't even offer help. most of the time people don't offer help because I don't share my woes with anybody. I just find it as a big pinnacle of weakness. So I never talk about my problems. It's very rare if I do. I say never, but I do. But it's very, very rare, and it's for people that I would say have known me for quite some time at that point. So Taylor, do you identify with any of that? Some of it.
I don't have a problem accepting help if it's something that I can accept help with, and I recognize that. I dislike being offered help or assumed to need help for something that I am clearly competent enough to do. It should be obvious to everyone that I can do this on my own with no problem at all. But no, I think like when Trey was explaining that sounds pretty helpful to me. However, we're using different feeling functions. So I don't have a sense of insult. It's more of a learning experience for the FE, I would assume.
Yeah, it feels like exposure to me, which I don't personally like. And maybe it's an FI thing. Us FI users are known to get butthurt. So,
see, I have hurt until I do. And as far as identifying what's making me mad, I a lot of times really will not have any idea what made me so mad. Because logically there's this is going on. There's several things in life that could be stressing me out or pissing me off. How am I supposed to identify which one it is? I don't know a lot, and I don't really try to figure it out most of the time unless it's like a big thing. And when it is a big thing, I'm not prepared to be a type 8 and then get some like FI because I'm never prepared for that. I'm not qualified to handle it.
You mean someone else's FI?
Huh?
Or your own? Or do you mean someone else's FI or your own?
I can FE my way through someone else's FI.
Okay.
But I cannot.
You said you weren't qualified to handle somebody else's stubborn whatever they're upset about.
I mean, by the time we get done with this, Damon and I assume we'll probably have two people have called us for crises that we need to fix tonight, real quick.
There's some mid-type crisis going on. Crises over here.
I mean, do people call you for crises? Do people call you with their problems on the regular? Like, oh my God, this just happened. I need you to help me. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
But most of those have been squandered because oh no, this is.
I just saw like a visual of Dexter killing all the people.
I say that most of those have been squandered because people learn not to. They get their problem solved, but in the most aggressive, blunt, direct manner, where it becomes me. I become more of the problem than the original problem.
There's an imbalance. You just took a bunch of my time to solve your problem. I'm not going to say anything explicitly, but just by the way that I'm treating you, that you owe me something, or you owe me not to do that shit anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of that attitude. I wish it wasn't sometimes because, like I said, I strive to be a better person, but I recognize that sometimes this blunt aggression, it comes out in a way that somebody, if it's a major crisis like ER, hospital, that's one thing. But if somebody calls me what is seemingly not a crisis to me, again, this is my own bias because sometimes these things that I think are inflated are actually serious issues to these people. And it's their own internal perception. But for me, I see it as like totally a waste of time. And so I'm going to hit it with this brute force. So what I've learned to do lately is defer everyone to Trey. Trey loves handling these issues.
We're going to go weird.
It's so true, though. I actually do enjoy it. Like, he'll send, if someone calls him, and they're like, they've got some kind of emotional issue going on. Next thing I know, they're talking to me. And I'm like,
good.
I do a lot of deferring. Everything is deferred off. If it's emotional, yeah, it's going out of my life. It's going to Trey. Yeah, it's so,
he'll be there to drive you to the ER, but or whatever is happening.
Taken to the hospital, bailed out of jail. If you need someone to fight with you, fine. If it's something stupid that I've told you not to do before and you did it again, I'll save you. But we've got some shit talking out later, and yeah, people don't even bring me their emotional problems anymore. they know not to come here. I will give you some practical advice and I will help you out, but I will not listen to you butthurt about your girlfriend. I didn't like her anyway.
Totally true.
Yeah, and I got an audience person right here. Cookie Tookie says, strength on the outside is always compensation. Yeah, it is. That's the whole point of Enneagram, is understanding Enneagram 8 is overcompensation for fixation, that internal fear of weakness. And whereas Enneagram 8 is actually, in my opinion, one of the weaker of types, because they're so unaware of their own fears that they're so removed from their own ego. They don't even know how it's manifesting because they don't even know their own fears. They push their fears so far down that it's hard to actually improve because you're not aware of what's actually happening. It's a lack of almost self-awareness that's going on. So in retrospect, if I were to be totally logical, the Enneagram 8 is very disadvantaged as far as self-improvement goes. So yeah, it is a compensation. That's the whole point of Enneagram, and why I said earlier you want to move away from type. So yeah, it's that overcompensation for sure. So you guys got to understand, and yeah, you said you're harsh on 8s for this reason. Well, 8s will be harsh back, and it's probably not the best pathway to go on an 8 is to be harsh on them, even though they love a good fight, but they get more obsessed with the fight than the actual solution. And I'd say this in general consensus, of course. A mature 8 will learn that, you know, you got to take a breath, you got to breathe. But sometimes the focus of the fight becomes more fun and more exhilarating in its own regard than the actual solution, to where they'll contradict themselves just because they want to prolong the fight.
And I think that 8s look for fights. So if you can show that, like, you can approach them in a just from what I've heard, a gentle way, and then show that, you know, you're not necessarily trying to fight them, or you're not trying to do whatever they think you're trying to do. You know, you're just trying to help. And if they can see that that's your core intention, I think a lot of times the 8s, you know, they can.
There's a counterphobic behavior, I assume it's counterphobic, where, you know, there's enough of these people that you never have to worry about running out of conflicts, is the good news. Bad news is they feel the need to you know, be assertive of the 8 without realizing that there is really, genuinely, when you get stuck in 8 mode or whatever, there's no fear there. I mean, that's not a scared spot. That is nothing but determination and anger. And that's not something that is going to work out good for anyone. Except for us, I guess, we get to play and plays about right. But yeah, I don't think that I did when I was younger, but I don't look for fights at all anymore. They still find me, but it's normally out of that counterphobic sort of competitive behavior that's unnecessary and inappropriate at the time.
Yeah. So Taylor, let's cover intuition. And obviously this is going to be a good subject because it's your dominant function. It's my auxiliary function as far as MBTI goes. And so let's cover how the 8 manifests as extroverted intuition. I know that a lot of people might have confused for ESTP, but you being an ENTP, you've obviously identified with that more. What aspect of ENTP do you identify with most, and how does that correlate to you being an 8?
You know, being extroverted intuition is so natural to me that it's almost hard to explain because it's too obvious to me, if that makes sense. But like the crisis situations, I can certainly see in those situations how I'm acting ahead of the situation. There was one time when it was a real life and death situation, and I have no idea how this happened, but I was laying in bed. It was like 4 a.m. I just got home from a party, and I was going to bed, and I sat up and told the girl who was with me, X, Y, and Z is happening right now. We need to go over there. And went over there, and sure as shit, X, Y, and Z was happening. Still have no idea how that happened. That's just one of those things. I did have to teach myself to not fight extroverted intuition. I know that most ENTPs go through a big phase of trying to use TI instead of NE, and that almost always doesn't work. So, but yeah, once I learned to embrace it and not fight it, you know, it's just, I don't know. I guess I don't know what it would be like to not have it so much. It does prevent me from, it prevents me from getting in situations where I respond, I lose control. I almost never lose control. and I know what will make me lose control, and like letting someone leave their art, not saying something about the art supplies for 5 days, will make it so that by the time I do say something, it's way overstated. So I try to avoid those situations.
I can say for me, when the 8 manifests as far as the intuition, it doesn't. My intuition is almost shut off in the sense of, being able to see the future and analyze patterns. For me, it shuts off in any type of irritation or anger. I actually consider it a loss of creativity. I feel like I almost go TESE, like straight looping process. For me, I don't feel but the only aspect of the 8, which does get intuitive as far as operating off my gut. I just kind of feel like I know what to do without actually thinking. But there is the aspect of the traditional definition of introverted intuition and recognizing patterns. I'm telling you, my whole head shuts off. If I'm angry at all, there's that lack of identification with thought process. I don't even know what I'm thinking. I'm just doing. I get in a performance mode. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like I'm putting on a performance. It means I am designed to perform. And I don't think of what it is that I am even doing. It just happens, and it happens in a way that I would say more often than not, it comes off, like I said, very excellently, because it's almost like I've internalized that crisis situation, whatever it may be. So this manifests almost like a TESE thing. I can't recognize a pattern or a correlation between NI and 8 in myself. And so I don't know how that would manifest if, as far as getting angry or whatever. I would say that mainly the 8 is represented in my personality as TE and SE, which if there were an MBTI type that were TESE, I would probably go with that one versus TENI, because I operate on 8. I relate to 8 even more than I do with the TENI-SE aspect. So that's what's created a lot of the confusion with people who see the MBTI type ENTJ, but yet my sociotype I identify a lot more with SLE because of that aspect.
Yeah.
So that's do what?
Go, yeah. I was just going to jump in if you're done. If you're not.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't lose creativity. It gets focused. So the ENTP, ADHD sort of everything's everywhere mentality just kind of focuses in. And I wish that somebody would start a dictaphone if I start yelling at someone, because my most articulate monologues are when I'm pissed. Really, I just start spewing wisdom everywhere. But yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. It certainly narrows it in, but it doesn't turn it off. I mean, I identify a lot with SE too, which I don't know how that even works. I don't know how it would, but it's actually Eric said something to me one time that was interesting, because the same thing that I heard from Katie or other people, like when you walk in, people know that you're there, especially if you're angry. And I wanted to get some more clarity on what that even meant. So I asked Eric, and he said, and I imagine this is extroverted intuition with type A. He said that I look like I'm shadow boxing mentally all the time. Like I'm just kind of sitting here waiting for stuff to go down, and looking for it and always scanning for it. And like I would be thrilled if somebody would do something retarded. So he put it, I look like I'm mentally shadow boxing, and what else? And if he decided that he was going to try to hit me, I've had him slap 7 times before he lifted his hand. I have no FI, so I don't know. And I haven't tested this observation yet, like I have tested several other things, like how people will complain just to get the empathy. I didn't believe that at first until I tested it early.
Would you say that your D8 and extroverted intuition would be more like focused or channeled? A lot of people who lead with extroverted intuition seem to be, there's a stereotype that they're all over the place. I don't get that from you. Do you think 8's having an effect on that, like that laser focus, like this is what I need to do? How do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a big thing. And then, like I said, I'm a TI heavy variety of 8. And back to where you get your Enneagram type or all this stuff, I have no idea how it all comes together. I think it's interesting that I've got an ENTJ dad and an INTP mom. So, you know, someone can get however they want to psychoanalytical on that. But yeah, I am pretty together for an ENTP. I did show up late to this, which is typical, but not very late. So yeah, I mean, I keep my shit together on my own. It's if I did a 360 with the camera, you would see how cluttered my shit is, but I know where it's at.
I think I remember Eric saying the same thing. I know how cluttered it is, but I know where everything is.
Yeah, I'm more organized than he is.
Yeah, I would imagine so. You know, TI heavy. But that being said, is there anything you want to add about the 8 that really stood out to you? Any stories that you say, or anything you want the audience to know as far as your own personal experiences?
Oh, I'm sure I'll come up with a million later, but not really. Just it's. I'm still real interested in it. Like I said, I'm still kind of figuring out how all these things play out with me because I've known about Enneagram for a long time. I'm just interested in it until I started watching some videos and then really started identifying with it. But at first, I didn't believe I was an 8. I tested an 8, and then I was like, but I think I'm a 7-wing 8 because I want to party right now. But the more I look at it, I think that I'm certainly an 8. It's been it's interesting still so far. And then there's the little just the odds and ends that have to do with the type. One of the things was 8s know their own worth, and they're not afraid of buying themselves nice things. Jewelry. I mean, I heard that, like, well, shit, I had no idea. But, yeah, I'm still learning. It's interesting, but apparently I'm mature because I've already been mistaken for 2. So.
But I think it's interesting though, because like for me, I don't even like, I feel like in a way like that was what I was trying to say the whole time, but never really found the words. It's what you just said, which is the 8s know how much they're worth. And that's what I was trying to express, is that as a human being, you have like a sense of worth that, like, just from my like when you look at type 5s, like, you know, it's like they're acting as if they don't exist. And so a lot of times, even when there's like I have gotten upset at people and I have voiced it, but it has to go to a point where, like, you know, it's almost a gift to inform the person of what's going on because they just missed it. You know, like for me, it was like, I remember one time specifically where, you know, I went and bought everyone like seats at the movie theater and stuff, and like we all went to hang out, and like, you know, everything was going great or whatever, and then like there's these 2 people that always start drama, and like they just had to do it again, you know. And it's like, and I already set it up like where their last conflict or any conflict in the future should not have happened, because that I had figured out like what both people were actually worried about, you know what I mean? And so I had created like a space where they should be able to get along just fine, you know what I mean? But they found something different, something that they've never complained about before. Just they pulled it right out of their ass, and they're like, you know what? We're just gonna get upset again. So like at that point, I was like, do you guys not realize that I drive you guys everywhere, that I do this, that I do that, and here's what I get back, you know what I mean? And so I've seen where, like, in a way, like I have shown my needs and what I want, and like just sort of my own, like if I'll own up to getting upset and stuff like that. But I noticed that every time that I do that, I've always looked back like, should I have actually gotten upset? And there's like a sense of like, yes, I should have. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know, like I know that I have a right to be upset in that moment. And I think that's like progress for a 5. Like if you don't necessarily like think you should not do that again, and like you understand that what you were doing was like validated, the more I think a 5 does that, I think the more the better it is for them.
I frequently throughout my life have found myself encouraging people or even forcing them once or twice to confront something aggressively, because as much as that would not be good advice for myself, I think that your situation is a lot more common. And most people don't want to rock the boat when they should be tipping that motherfucker over.
So I want to start closing this this conversation. We ran about an hour and a half, so I want to make sure we start putting it, winding it up. So Trey, I think you got some good 8 perspective as far as witnessing and living with an 8. You kind of get the general gist of how it is. It's not always an easy path, but no Enneagram is. And these particular issues that are associated with 8 is one side of the 9-sided coin. And so one of the things I do want to stress is there's a lot more about 8s we didn't cover. And but mainly it's about an issue of vulnerability. It's an issue of weakness. At some core level, that's where 8s, they struggle with. And for me, it manifests, like I said earlier, as almost a fear of people wanting to help, because I'm thinking, what aspect do you see that makes you think you need to help? Am I demonstrating some weakness to make you think that you need to help me? And because I don't think I need your help, and I want to kind of take on the world in my own way. I want to make sure that I do it, and I have the capacity to do it. Can I accumulate the resources to do it? Do I have the capability to do it? And if you're struggling between 6, 8, and 3, there's kind of a really easy identifier here. The counterphobic 6 and 8 look a lot alike, and 3 and 8s look a lot alike. And if you're really struggling between the aspect of these 3 types, the 3 is very centered on its image, more so than anything else. To the point where they lose touch with their values. They'll take on an image as they see it, and they see it to work for them, for their whatever they're trying to accomplish in life. They'll take on different roles, different images, whatever it may be, and they almost have a loss of identity. Whereas the 6s, they deal with overcoming fear, more so than any other type. I'm afraid, how do I fix it? 6s innately feel that they're the weaker ones of the world, and the only way to become part of the strong is to keep strengthening yourself. So 6s will often appear, like I said earlier, as these super strong, dominant figures because they force themselves to behave that way. But when you crack open the shell, all you're seeing is they're overcoming fear, a basis of fear of being whatever it may be that they're afraid of. And usually that fear is rooted in exploring themselves. The 8, on the other hand, is trying to sweep over vulnerability. Their fear is actually being vulnerable. It's not the fear itself. It is, how do I minimize every single weakness that I have, and how do I get past this and make sure that I control my environment? Their baseline fear is overcoming vulnerability and to not be controlled. And so when you're looking at a 6 and you're seeing that, if you're questioning your fear and you're saying that I have a core fear of this or a fear of this, and everybody has fears. 8s are more unaware of it than most types, but everybody has their fears. 8, like I said, is the fear of vulnerability in itself. They're sweeping vulnerability and they're burying vulnerability. 6s are burying fear. So if you take a person who's looking at burying fear, what you're going to get is a person who is overcompensated for that. The person who has to tell you that they're not afraid. The person who has to tell you that, they have to almost boast and brag about it in a very, very, obvious way. Whereas I see it, when I see a 6, a counterphobic 6, personally, my experience looking at a counterphobic 6 is it looks very weak to me. It looks like overcompensation. It looks like they're overstepping it. And to me, it's not like a natural confidence. It's like a forced confidence. And and Trey's mentioned a few things that he can see about in a counterphobic 6 as well. So if you're looking at this, you can usually see it. These 2 particular things, it almost feels like an overconfidence, like they overextend themselves. Whereas an 8 seems to be a much more natural confidence. It just kind of comes out and it's very poised. And it's because they're not worried about fear. They're not trying to overcome it, nor is it their objective to overcome fear. They're trying to overcome weakness. So eights, their hot button is people who exposing weakness in them, as in, you know, like, I know what buttons to push, so I'm pushing those buttons, and when you start cracking that open, eights are very closed off. So eights don't like to share a lot of personal information. They're very, very prideful in personal information. Now, when they grow past it and they become healthier human beings, these all things they fall away as the eight comes more connected to their true consciousness and their true personality. But if you're looking at anybody under the influence of the ego, you're going to see manifestations of these symptoms. Trey, Taylor, anything to add to that before we close out?
Yeah, I certainly agree. I don't know that necessarily everyone would see a counterphobic 6 as obviously as an 8. I think that it just stands right out to us, and I am very intentional actually about letting them know subtly. And they do every time. I would just lost the train of thought. The fear of being controlled. I guess I've always looked at it as I have an overarching desire and theme in my life of autonomy. Which is probably the same thing as wanting to be controlled. But it's something I assume that it's a big respect for everybody's autonomy as pretty much the supreme ethical code of everything. And so if you fuck with my autonomy or someone else's autonomy, if you start invading someone else's freedom to live and be happy or whatever, that is when you start protecting people, you start fighting. It's
Taylor, I lost the last part. Could you try getting closer to the mic? It's kind of fading in and out.
Yeah. So autonomy as a desire would be the opposite side. It would be the same way as saying I don't want to be controlled. And since I'm told that's my basic fear, I do know that I value autonomy. That's the line I've given myself my whole life. And so I defend that in others. And I also won't cross that line into others without just reason. So the fightiness is certainly there, but I don't think I've ever just gone and fought somebody who was weaker than me and didn't have any defense. You know, I've never fully down to that level. It's not, that would make me feel like a piece of shit.
I can definitely agree with that. I've never bullied anybody. I've never even trolled online. I've never posted a negative comment. You know, I've tried to be as cordial as possible in replying to comments. There is an aspect of bullying which really just grinds my gears in a way. It's very anti-characteristic of an 8 to be a bully. Surprisingly, a lot of the online descriptions say 8s are these dominating, controlling things, and they can be bullies at very unhealthy levels, but it's very uncommon. Because there's a aspect of 8 which is the relational aspect, which is I don't want to be controlled. So why do I pick on the weak? Whereas counterphobic 6s, which are often mistyped as 8s, can often become bullies because they're overcoming their own fear. In order to not be eaten, you have to be the eater. And that's kind of the counterphobic 6 mentality, whereas the 8 is I am on top. I don't have to worry about being eaten because I'm already an elite. I was born almost this arrogance that comes with an 8 in a way that I'm already here. I don't need to worry about being eaten. And so there's that kind of attitude that comes with an 8. They don't feel like they're part of the weak and they have to work their way up. They feel like they're already on the top. And there's that natural confidence. Like I said, the counterphobic 6 almost overcompensates. And every counterphobic 6 is going to tell you they're not a counterphobic 6 because again, it sounds like they're weak. It sounds like they're not weak. I'm sorry. It sounds like they're fearful of being actually weaker in this regard. So there's that fear they're overcoming. They're again sweeping this under the rug. You know, like, oh, I'm not part of the weak. I'm tough. I'm tough. Tell me I'm tough. It reminds me of the little chihuahuas, which are always the worst dogs on the planet, who bite your ankles because they're trying to demonstrate how tough they actually are. Where I don't care. Like, you know, there's this innate understanding that you're already here. You never feel like, as an 8, you never feel like you're here. And regardless, it's not that the 8 is better than the counterphobic 6. you guys got to understand that all Enneagram types are unhealthy by nature. I don't follow the healthy model, which is you're a healthy 8. You move away from all these vantage points as you grow out of the Enneagram, and you want to grow out of the Enneagram ultimately. You're going to have a core fixation, but that's going to come to light when you look at the holy truth of that side. So there's that aspect, using the virtues of the Enneagram. So just keep in mind that if you're struggling with those types, the counterphobic 6 is overcoming fear, 8 is overcoming weakness or vulnerability, and overcoming the control, whatever control is being influenced on them. So I can tell you that bullying is not characteristic of a typical 8. Maybe an 8 who's had a lot of trauma and has been, fight or flight, but it's not typical. Usually it's a counterphobic 6 trait. Trey?
I was going to say that I see the 8 as the bully that comes back and apologizes. Because if driven to a point where they bully somebody out of frustration, they'll recognize that, they were just really pissed off about something. And most likely, if an 8 were to bully you about something, it's not because they really wanted to. It's just because it was a bad day, and they're probably going to come back and apologize.
Yes.
At the same time, though, they might not, because they wouldn't want to expose to you that they get out of control.
Just to summarize that encapsulate that whole point without going on a monologue, just to clear it up and make it one nice little phrase, is the 6's core phrase is survival of the fittest, and we got to be the fittest. The 8 is survival of the fittest. We are the fittest. Now we have to take care of the people who aren't surviving. So that, like I said, 8 integrates to 2 at this healthier level, according to some Enneagram models, and it's because they have that side. Okay, so how do we help these other people become more fit in society? How do we do this? There's this moralistic side to 8 that's often ignored in online descriptions. The challenger, the domineer, all this stuff. But I often say that 8s are very soft at heart. They've just built up so many layers of armor that getting to their heart is very difficult to do. Whereas 6s will be a lot more open about their problems and fears and whatever. And of course, the counterphobic 6 is projecting almost a overconfidence. But they may be denial of those fears, but ultimately you'll see some of those distinct differences. So Trey, I'm gonna give you the last here, and then I'm gonna give Taylor the last word, and then we'll sign off.
All right. One last thing I would like to point out, just because I feel it's important. So when I started to learn about 8s, mainly it's just from being around Damon, it was really something else to me, because when he explained how it was for him, he said that he would feel an irritation in his body, when something happened, and I never really got that word irritated. I never got it necessarily, because it's very underexpressed for me. But at the same time though, it's crazy because he'd talk about he'd get a gut reaction to something, a gut feeling, he should do something. He said it was like a punch to the stomach, and that was crazy to me, because I remember when I was a lot younger, being in high school. I remember probably in 8th or 9th grade, I made fun of this guy because he he told me that he was gonna. He was like, I was like, why'd you do that? Or something like that. I don't remember how the conversation got going, but basically he goes, because my gut told me to do it, and I always follow my gut. And I was like, what? So you're your stomach's rumbling? Oh, I should do this. I didn't get it. It made no sense to me that you'd feel it in your body and then go, oh, this is what I need to do. What the hell? It's almost like your stomach's talking to you, but it rumbles in a certain direction. So I totally dismissed him as this really weird dude. That's a bunch of bullshit. I walked away that guy's weird. But that's just the thing, is that there's a legitimate almost someone strikes you a pain or something. And I think it might have to do with a big sensitivity almost, just like I said this whole time, is that it's almost like they know they're upset when they're upset. You know what I mean? So it's almost like everything's kind of heightened. They've got a heightened sense in a way. And so when they're upset about something, it's very obvious to them, and it's probably a punch to the gut. So I want to make that clear, because that was one of the weirdest things to me when I found out about eights, because I definitely do not experience this like gut feeling at all. So when I heard about that, that was really weird, and I didn't get it. And I just thought it was important to recognize that there is actually like a legitimate gut instinct, like a punch, like a body understanding, a body intelligence. So yeah,
it's a spidey. I call it my spidey sense, because actually when I embraced my intuition, stopped trying to outthink myself, admission to parties was me looking at people. I swear to God, I would go, yes, yes, no, yes, and it worked excellently. But I would never ever in my life say I always trust my gut. That sounds like a counterphobic 6, not an 8. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think that that's a good point. Is that it is real, and I don't know how to describe it. I don't use my gut so much as like that person is like a mind and minesweeper in space. I don't trust that square over there. I'm not going to click on that one. But yeah, that's I guess all I got. If I've got the last word, I think that you and I were going to start at the death now after this, see who wins, ENTP or ENTJ, and
Yeah, that will not be broadcasted. So if you don't see any more MBTV videos, the demigod won. So
I might record it.
Knife.
Yeah.
You're using knife, right?
Do what?
We're using knives, right? I only brought a knife.
Oh man. Okay, I gotta put all my pistols away. All right. So that being said, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your attendance here, and just keep tuned. We're going to try to get a little more videos going as far as Enneagram types and starting to relate them back to MBTI types. It's always a privilege to have any guest on here. Taylor, thank you for joining us, and keep on your research, guys. We appreciate your dialogue, your constant chat flow, good questions you asked, good conversational points, potential future videos. If you got any suggestions, make sure you go on our Slack, send me a message, and then I'll try to get some videos out in that favor. There's a lot of video topics I need to cover, and it's been a very busy month for me as far as outside of MBTV, so we'll keep you all tuned. And if you have any questions on 8, just feel free to talk to any 8. Go on Talking with Famous People. You've got Taylor on there. He's obviously 8. We've talked about that today, so you can talk to him, or you can talk to me on Slack, and we'll cover more there. So thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time.